We didn't know whether going into France, whether the Germans might begin an attack then. But all they were doing was building up a sufficient force to advance in the spring, which they usually did, of course. In 1937, with a group of friends, we decided to join the heavy anti-aircraft regiment. I thought we were probably likely to be home defence, being anti-aircraft, that we might be stationed in one of the big cities, like maybe London or even Birmingham, Manchester, any of the big cities. The British Expeditionary Force that went to France, if I remember rightly, was 156,000. We were part of it. I was 21. My holidays were spent in England. I never went abroad before, so that was my first country I went to was France. I felt apprehensive. I thought, well, what am I going into? We didn't know whether going into France, whether the Germans might begin an attack then. But all they were doing was building up a sufficient force to advance in the spring, which they usually did, of course. So from the 15th of September to the 10th of May, we were in a situation where no war, waiting. And by Jove, it was a cold winter. Oh, the cold was sorely. So what did we do? Well, we had our guns in position, and we trained, just all, and played quite a bit of sport. And that was it, until the 10th of May, and then, of course, action started. With the French and ourselves, we outnumbered the German army, almost 2-1. But the two panzer divisions that came through France with their tanks, were far superior in their efficiency and training. They moved very quickly, and the French withdrew, and the situation was that by about the 20th of May, they'd taken Calais, they'd taken Boulogne, and the only channel port left where a possible evacuation could be considered was Dunkirk. So it was about the 20th of May, I think, that we got orders to move to Dunkirk as quickly as possible, because it came through that an evacuation was about to take place. There was a corridor, one road. It took us 3 days to get to Dunkirk, because that road was absolutely packed with civilians, with soldiers on foot, soldiers in lorries, ourselves towing our guns. When we got to Dunkirk, Dunkirk was in ruins. They bombed it so badly that there wasn't a single building left standing. The harbour had been destroyed by bombing and shelling. There was a queue on the beach, which was God knows how big. There were also large numbers of troops down on the water's edge. We set our guns up, and the air raids, there were 3 or 4 big air raids each day. The main aircraft they used, of course, was the Stuka. Now, the Stuka was a terrifying bomber because from 15,000 feet, it did a vertical dive. It was carrying a 250-pound bomb under the body. On each wing were 2 50-pound bombs, and it released its bombs at 1,500 feet, and it went straight down into where it was pointing. And fortunately, all the bombing was on sand, so there was at least a chance that, it wasn't going to injure or even kill anybody. There'd be a period when there would be no planes at all, and suddenly a dozen Stukas would come. And they were aiming, there were so many troops on the beach by the water's edge. There was something like 4,000 troops killed on that beach over the period of, 10 days? But we watched with horror troops by that water's edge wading out to these small lifeboats with the bigger ships offshore. And one or two, I saw one ship literally cut in half. You know how it happened? A magnetic mine. The Germans had laid magnetic mines. So the route from Dunkirk back to Dover was like that. You know, one thought, oh my God, are we going to survive this? Yeah. The first action we saw was actually in Dunkirk itself. That was the first time we fired our guns in anger. Well, 3 days we fired, I think, pretty well continuously. Beside the breech of the gun would be shells already ready to put in. So as soon as you fired, the next one in. They were just all firing flat out. Now, those shells you're firing, they are spreading shrapnel. So you're not firing a solid shot. You're firing a shrapnel, which will spread out and give you more chance of hitting the aircraft. Yeah. I was an aimer. I received orders from what they called a predictor. A predictor was a machine which told you where to point the gun. The gun traverses in accordance with directions from this machine, which predicts. And you're following. And all I did was to get the gun up to the required elevation to fire the shell we hoped would bring a plane down. So I was looking through a telescope. And as I was ordered up, I ordered, right, that's it, on target. And we got 3. Not bad for one gun, is it? When we knew we had hit a plane, there was euphoria. People cheered and said, oh, we've got 1. We've got 2. We got 3. It's all been worth it. We're shooting down somebody who was killing our troops on the beach and causing casualties. It's our enemy. It's our job to try and shoot down planes. That's part of it. That's why we are anti-aircraft. Against them. We must try and shoot down planes. Then we got orders to destroy our guns and move to the beach. So at midnight, I remember midnight, we drove through the town to our position on the beach and we queued up. The first thing we thought about was, how much food do we have? Not much. Water? Yes, we'd all had filled our water bottles. We had that going. But how long we were going to be in that queue, we didn't know. People asked me this and said, were you all sort of in good order? And I said, yes, in the main we were, but there were 1 or 2 instances of ill discipline. And I'll tell you one. A group of soldiers came out of the town. They'd obviously been searching for food, but mainly drink, alcohol. They came out of the town, not far from where we were queuing up. Instead of going to the back of the queue, they started walking up. An officer got up from in front of us, not very far away from us, and he stood in their way. He said, you get back of the queue. And he drew his revolver. I knew that when he pointed his revolver, that it was absolutely serious. Because to let those men just bypass the queue and go up, the effect on morale, it was going to disrupt the whole of the sort of organized withdrawal of the troops waiting their turn. I think he would have shot them. I really do. A number of troops from the sand dunes thought they could get evacuated quicker by running down to the beach and trying to get on these small boats. Of course, that was a mistake, a tragic mistake, I thought, to see the number of troops wading into the water to try and get on the few number of small boats and fighting over it to get in. And even to the extent that boats overturned with so many men trying to get in, so they were drowned. A lot of soldiers going into that water were drowned because they were fighting to get on these little ships. But when we got to the front of the queue, a lot of casualties were lying on stretchers, and they asked for stretcher bearers. And I and several of the men I was with, we said, well, you'd volunteer. So for an hour, we took stretchers with wounded men on to the dressing station. I didn't see any stretcher bearers going onto the mole, actually. That's something that bothered me a bit because, I thought, well, what are they doing with these stretchers? How many men have been wounded who are not able to be evacuated? Because I know in the end that a lot of wounded men were left behind because they couldn't get them on the boats, captured. A Stuka attack came in as we were running towards the mole. I heard it because they had these sirens. It was like 10 police sirens. That siren, as it gets nearer the ground, it gets louder. The effect on you, is terrifying. It was terrifying. We dived into a sand crater already there. This bomb landed. It was like we were in there, and the bomb landed there. We were buried in sand. How many of us were there? 4, 5 of us, I think. And, sand, kilometers. But when you think that that was sand, what would have happened had that been sort of concrete or hard surface? Shrapnel would have completely taken it, yeah. I can remember as we dug ourselves out, the beach master who was directing us onto the mole came up to us, and because we'd suffered this, he pushed us out. He said, "Go on, quick, get on." We staggered a bit, yes, no doubt about it. We were it wasn't a normal sort of walk. It was a trot, a run, a staggering run. When you're 21, I think you have it, it's an adventure. Tragic for some, but for me, no. I was one of the lucky ones. One of 350,000 troops. Amazing, isn't it? That number of troops were evacuated in the end.